You know, we usually think of clothing as a way to express ourselves, right? To show the world who we are. But what if the clothes you wore weren't your choice at all? What if they were chosen for you, by the state, to control you? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore. We're heading back in time to 11th century Cairo, right in the heart of the Fatimid Caliphate, to uncover a really intense story about fashion, faith, and power.
So, let's picture the scene. I want you to get any image of a dusty, quiet town out of your head. This is Cairo. We're talking about the thriving, beating heart of a massive empire. It was a city just humming with trade, with art, with scholarship. Under the Fatimids, it was a truly cosmopolitan hub, a place of incredible wealth and culture where all kinds of different communities were living, for the most part, side by side.
And in a society this complex, clothing was basically a social map. It was this visual language that everyone, and I mean everyone, understood without a single word being spoken. The style of your turban, the kind of belt you wore, the color of your robe, all of it instantly signaled your place in the world. It was how you could tell the rich from the poor, a soldier from a scholar, or a Muslim from a non-Muslim.
But what happens when that language gets hijacked? When the government steps in and decides exactly what your clothes must say about you, whether you like it or not? This is where the story takes a really dark turn, from clothing as just a social marker to clothing as a kind of public sentence.
So how in the world did this happen? Well, the answer really lies with two men, a father and his son, two rulers whose reigns could not have been more different. We're about to see this dramatic, almost violent shift in how the state treated the Ahl el-Dima. That's the term for the protected, non-Muslim communities living under Islamic rule.
So on one hand, you have the father, Caliph Al-Aziz. His reign, by all accounts, was this incredible period of tolerance. He was even influenced by his Christian wife and actively promoted a sense of equality. But then, his son, Al-Hakim, comes to power, and everything changes. The historical sources describe him as erratic, unpredictable, and severe. His reign plunged these communities into an era of intense persecution, and his weapon of choice, the very clothes on their backs.
And look, this wasn't just a handful of random mean-spirited rules. No, Al-Hakim put in place a formal legal system that was designed to visibly mark and segregate non-Muslims. It was known as Ghiyar, and it was basically weaponized fashion.
The word Ghiyar literally just means differentiation. And honestly, that was the entire point. It was a system of laws created to make sure that with just a single glance, anyone could tell who was a Muslim and who was not. Now, the idea wasn't entirely new, but Al-Hakim, he would enforce it with a unique and escalating cruelty.
And this slide really shows you the terrifying speed of it all. It starts in the year 1004. Pretty straightforward, black turbans and a special belt. But just look how fast it gets worse. 4 years later, it's not enough to be identified on the street. Now you need an iron cross or bells just to go into a public bath. And by 1010, the rules become physically crushing, deeply, profoundly humiliating.
This chart just lays out how specific it all was. And these markers, they were not arbitrary. Christians were forced to wear a heavy cross, a literal physical burden that represented their faith. Jewish people were forced to wear a wooden effigy of a calf, which was a clear, calculated, and humiliating reference to the story of the golden calf in their own scriptures. These weren't just simple identifiers. They were carefully chosen symbols designed to subjugate.
So what was the real-world impact of all this? What did it actually feel like to live inside this social skin, to have your body publicly marked by the state every single day?
I mean, really just pause and think about that for a second. How does it feel to walk out your front door knowing that you are instantly identifiable, instantly judged, and instantly set apart from everyone else, when the most sacred part of your identity becomes a public target?
The daily reality must have been grinding. There was no blending in. You couldn't just get lost in the crowd. And that physical weight, a heavy cross or a wooden block around your neck, was a constant, painful reminder of your lower social status. This was all by design. It policed social boundaries, and, it also had a very practical purpose for the state. It made it incredibly easy for tax collectors to spot who had to pay the special poll tax levied on non-Muslims, the jizya.
And maybe one of the most insidious, cruel little details was a rule applied specifically to women. Dhimmi women were forced to wear two different colored shoes, one black and one white. Can you imagine that? Every single step they took, whether walking to the market or visiting a friend, was this awkward, unmissable declaration of their status. It turned the simple, everyday act of walking into a performance of humiliation.
But here's where the story shifts. Because amidst all of this crushing oppression, a different story was unfolding, a story of quiet, powerful resilience. So how did people survive this? Let's dig into how the Coptic Christian community specifically found ways to endure and hold on to their identity, even with these laws trying to grind them down.
Because you have to understand, when you're living in a system that is designed to break you, the simple act of surviving, of just waking up each day and continuing to be who you are, that itself becomes a profound act of resistance.
And to endure that pressure, not just for a day, but for years, to hold on to your faith and your community when everything around you is trying to strip it away, well, that is the ultimate act of defiance.
And here is how they did it. The sources we have reveal something absolutely incredible. Even while they were being forced to wear the black robes and heavy crosses of oppression, the Copts started weaving their own symbols into their clothes. They decorate their shirts with hidden motifs of plants and animals, and most importantly, the cross. As one writer at the time noted, it was as if they, quote, carried the gospel on their clothes, not just in their hearts. So you see the beautiful paradox here, right? The very thing these laws were trying to erase, their distinct religious identity, is exactly what became their greatest source of strength. They literally turned a garment of shame into a canvas for their faith. It really leaves us with this powerful question to think about. When a symbol of humiliation, like a heavy iron cross, is forced on you, can the very act of bearing it with dignity actually transform it? Can it, over time, become the ultimate mark not of your oppression, but of your unbreakable identity? It's something worth considering.